You're listening to the Sick and Good podcast. My name is Dustin Messick. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and a cancer survivor.
My name is Colin Goodwin. I'm a clinical psychologist and a cancer survivor.
In 2024, we are highlighting the Cancer Awareness Months in a special series.
We're promoting wellness by having discussions on screening, treatment, and recovery throughout the cancer journey.
To find a balance between sick and good.
That during the cancer process, both can be true.
The Sick and Good podcast is for educational purposes only. The podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen.
November is Stomach Cancer Awareness Month, and joining us as a special guest, we have Jon Florin. Jon has a history of organizational management and is the executive director and chief patient advocate for No Stomach for Cancer. Welcome to the podcast, Jon.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to bringing a little more awareness to stomach cancer.
Can you tell us more about your role, No Stomach for Cancer?
Sure. So as an executive director, I pretty much do every role within the organization. I'm the only paid employee of our organization. That's by design. Early on, our founder wanted to have an organization that was very lean and that was primarily volunteer driven. So the focus was really just on using our funds, our donor funds, to go towards the mission and not towards administrative burden. So as an executive director, as an only employee, then I'm tasked with all the different responsibilities of running a nonprofit. So I speak to patients or speak with patients via phone and email and social media, direct messaging. I speak with international researchers and experts around the world and coordinate different events with them. I advocate on Capitol Hill twice a year, promoting different legislation. I do all the administrative duties that you would come or know or expect an organization to have. I'm the graphic designer. I am the person who creates all the different images that you see on our website and on our social media. I do all the media interactions like I'm doing right now. I do interviews with television and radio when I'm asked. I do all the things that I guess the other term is, the jack of all trades. It keeps the day going. And, there's never a dull moment, certainly throughout the day. There's always something to do. There's always someone to interact with. There's always some project to work on. So it's a good place to be. It's at times can be overwhelming and sometimes stressful like any job, but certainly one that comes with a lot of reward.
Oh, I was just picturing like Dick Van Dyke's character from Mary Poppins, like you're playing all the instruments.
Playing all the instruments, correct. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, and does allow me to really have the pulse on what's happening in this space that we call stomach cancer.
So what are the prevalence rates of gastric cancers?
So as disease, the global burden of cancer, today we are stomach cancer is the fifth most common and fifth most deadly. And just last year, it was the third most deadly or second most deadly and third most common. So there has been some progress in the last handful of years, but stomach cancer has remained globally in the top 10 most deadly and most prevalent. Now in the United States, it represents under 2% of all new cases of cancer, and is approximately 27,000 new cases every year. But we kind of expect or suspect, I guess, that stomach cancer is probably more underreported than most cancers because it's a very difficult disease to diagnose. So we think that those numbers are skewed low, and that would be something that we talk about a lot in advocacy is really what are the real numbers here in the United States, and what can we do to reduce or eliminate the incidence in the U.S. because the numbers are so low comparative to outside the United States. So
Can you tell us what are some like warning signs or symptoms related to gastric cancers?
It's a good question. Stomach cancer, obviously we're talking about your stomach, right? That second brain that they say the stomach is, where you receive nourishment and everything. That when you get stressed or you have anxiety, you feel it in your stomach, or when you're hungry, you feel it in your stomach, or when you eat something that you don't it doesn't agree with you, you feel it in your stomach, right? So, and then we have a lot of food sensitivities nowadays because of the things that are in our food. So it's very, very difficult to diagnose because those symptoms that mimic a lot of kind of common things like anxiety or like food sensitivity or something like that, or irritable bowel or something else that has to do with your digestive system. Stomach cancer symptoms they mimic those symptoms, so they're often then stomach cancer is misdiagnosed as something else because of those similarities, or because we kind of live in this new world of we have all these energy drinks that are full of chemicals and caffeine, that there's evidence that causes digestive issues, and we have a high stress environment, generally speaking, that causes a lot of digestive issues. So people are, when they go into the doctor, they talk about a lot of the questions they first talk about is, oh, how do what's your job like? Or do you get enough sleep? Or what have you been eating? Or what's your diet look like? And a lot of times the doctor will dismiss those symptoms for being caused by something else, something common or day to day. So that's where we are in the stomach cancer world, is that these symptoms are difficult to point to just one thing. Indigestion or heartburn could mean a lot of things, right? So the very, very similar symptoms to those types of things.
Oh, can you speak to some potential risks for gastric cancers?
Certainly, the leading risk for stomach cancer is H. pylori infection. Now, H. pylori is a common infection globally. It's prevalent in water systems and food, in particular in underdeveloped countries where food and water sanitation is not as good as it is here in the United States or in developed countries. So H. pylori is a bacteria that, if left untreated, can cause persistent gastritis, inflammation of the stomach. So over time, if the stomach stays inflamed, there's a cellular change in your stomach that can lead to cancer. So that's a major risk factor for stomach cancer, and it remains the leading risk factor. Other obvious risk factors, or maybe not so obvious to some, but certainly in our world, is the hereditary. In the breast cancer world, there's some very well known hereditary risks, and there are some very well known hereditary risks in the stomach cancer world as well.
It's really fascinating. Also, some of what you said about some of the foods we eat, energy drinks, it kind of makes sense, but a lot of people in their early 20s love energy drinks.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. We have all these different chemicals that that are added to our food and different things. And certainly if we have any exposure to these things over a long period of time, it will cause digestive issues. So it doesn't necessarily lead to cancer, but it's just another thing that can distract from a potential case that's getting undiagnosed for somebody who has a risk for stomach cancer, whether they've had H. pylori infection before, or they have had family members who have had stomach cancer. So it's important for patients to go to the doctor when there are persistent symptoms, discuss those symptoms with a doctor, and especially if they have been going on for a while, or if there's any family history at all of gastrointestinal disease, is to get immediate medical attention when those symptoms occur.
This discussion we're having, I actually had a patient in the past where they had H. pylori that went untreated. Like they were given the antibiotics and they just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, I asked the doctor and they said, if you forgot, it's fine. Like your body will work itself out.
Yeah. It's those stories we hear all too often. And that's why stomach cancer, over 90% of cases, are diagnosed in late stages. For those specific reasons exactly that you mentioned just a second ago, is that especially in the United States, because there's not as many cases here as there are outside the United States, no one single clinic or hospital, unless it's a high volume cancer center, a high volume hospital in a large metropolitan area, not many hospitals see a lot of people with gastric cancer. So they don't recognize it. And doctors are a little in the dark about the risk factors or what the potential for their patient having a risk or potential for disease. So it's important that patients have those conversations with their doctors. They have to be advocates for themselves. They need to be persistent. Don't take no for an answer, especially when there's a persistent occurrence of symptoms.
Absolutely. Could you tell us about the known health disparities for gastric cancer?
Certainly. Well, it comes down to, the health disparities come down to, access to good health care mostly. But certainly we see a lot of rural issues, where people don't have that access or, to go see a gastroenterologist in a timely manner. And we also see it in the minority populations where there's some cultural and social things that are happening that they're avoiding going to the doctor to address persistent symptoms. So yes, there are those. And then of course, some cultural things that how food is prepared. Is there a high sodium content in a lot of the foods that they eat in some of these cultures that can exacerbate gastritis and changes in the mucosa in the stomach that can lead to gastric cancer. So yes, we those disparities are there, particularly indigenous populations, Asian American populations, African American populations, Hispanic American populations, all for the reasons I just listed.
And John, can you tell us some of the common treatments for this cancer?
That's the $1 million question, I think. The issue with stomach cancer in particular is because the majority of cases are in late stages that reduces your treatment options. Cancer has to be caught early, right? We all know this in order to be cured. So for stomach cancer, the really only curative treatment there is if you can catch it early enough or treat it to the point where the cancer has not grown beyond the stomach, then you can remove the stomach to prevent spread of the disease. So that's really the only treatment per se. There's experimental treatments out there, off-label treatments that are being used for other cancers or other things that are being thrown at gastric cancer, but there's just not a lot out there. Stomach cancer advocacy actually only started this whole group. Everyone who does this advocates for stomach cancer research. It's just started just in 2009. So we're way behind our peers. The American Cancer Societies of the world, the Susan G. Komens of the world, the Lung Cancer Association, all the others that have been around for decades. We've only been around since then. And so we've got a lot of catching up to do in order to fund the research to create those treatments. So we're on Capitol Hill advocating for different drugs to be approved for stomach cancer that were being used for other things. We're advocating for more biomarker testing and those approvals for insurance to cover that testing so that some of these biomarker drugs, these immunotherapies, can be used on stomach cancer. Now, in Asia, where it's most prevalent, they actually have a national screening system where, like we have regular colonoscopies, they have regular testing for H. pylori and regular endoscopies, looking for the disease early and treating it early.
Well, at least I guess we have somebody we can look to for a point of reference of some great screening approaches.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell our people, our patients, I guess, our patients and caregivers when they come to us is first and foremost, have you been tested? Have you been tested for H. pylori infection? Let's cross that off your list of to-dos. After that's been confirmed or denied, do you have any family history at all of gastrointestinal disease? Anything at all? and or lobular breast cancer. There's another one. There's a hereditary risk for gastric cancer that also has a risk for lobular breast cancer. So we ask them to think about that and talk to family members about that as well. But the next level is just going into the office and having a really in-depth conversation with a primary care provider. If you don't have the conversation, it's hard to get the treatment you need.
What are some adjustments to gastrectomy?
Gastrectomy, to the audience, that is complete stomach removal. In our community, they call themselves seahorses and platypuses because those two animals in the animal kingdom do not have a stomach. Yeah. Seahorses is the most popular and most common. So, and we have a support group just for them, worldwide support group called Gastrectomy Connections. And people from all over the world, part of this community of ours, don't have a stomach. There's people probably, in your neighborhood, your city, that are walking around living without a stomach. And comes with a lot of challenges, as you said. So when you don't have a stomach, what they do is they make an incision in the esophagus and below the stomach, and they connect the bottom, your lower intestine, to your esophagus. So it's kind of a straight pipe system that is created without the stomach there. So our seahorses have typically their first year is the most difficult year of adjustment. The body's learning how to function with this new plumbing, as they like to say. And so there's a lot of challenges with the volume of food they can eat. So typically, when someone has their stomach removed, they lose 40 to 70 pounds on average because they have to eat much smaller meals more often. They have to chew more consistently. Fluid intake is always an issue because there's no place to hold that liquid, right? When you're at your stomach was a holding tank primarily to hold food and digest it slowly and to absorb vitamins. So there's some vitamin deficiencies that occur. Vitamin B is a big one. Iron is another. So we find that a lot of gastrectomy patients will have to get vitamin B injections. They will have to see their doctor on a regular basis to have their iron levels checked and their bone density checked as well. Many also have to have regular glucose monitoring to monitor their sugar. And sugar is an issue no matter what for the gastrectomy community. It's very difficult for the body to manage that sugar when there's no place for it to go but straight down. So it's a shock to the system, and it creates something called dumping syndrome. The body can't handle that sugar that quickly. So most gastrectomy patients are on an ultra low sugar diet, which is good in general, but there's sugar in everything, right? It's disguised as many things in our foods. So it's a hard thing to manage. Some, though, there's a handful of gastrectomy patients out there that after a year or so can turn a corner and lead a completely normal eating life and go back to where they were before their stomach removal. They still have some challenges, again, as I mentioned, vitamin B, iron, bone density, things like that. And of course, liquid intake. A lot of gastrectomy patients are sensitive to water, believe it or not, just straight tap. Yeah, straight tap water. We don't know why. We don't know the physiological reason behind it, but they can easily drink a carbonated beverage. So it's a mystery in that world. They are an incredible bunch. There are 3 stomachless board members in our organization. I meet them all the time. I do whatever I can to support them, and it's a really unique group of people that we have a very close connection to in our organization.
Well, I got to say that a lot of people are probably very mindful about their eating choices and about the approach that they go through to eat, like slowly.
Yeah, slowly is right. Yep, you're right. Yep, they eat very slow, and they're very careful about the foods in general. Just it's a lot of clean eating, as you can imagine, among in that community. ironically enough, there are a lot of athletes out there who have had their stomach removed because of this disease. And they're doing triathlons, marathons, weightlifting, competitive weightlifting, professional weightlifting. It's pretty amazing because if you lose something like that, you lose your stomach, the place provides so much nourishment. And for some folks, it's almost a new lease on life, right? It's a way to start over again and to be healthy, right? Prior to that, when they had their stomach, maybe they weren't eating very well, or they were carrying a lot of weight. So that's kind of the silver lining for some in our gastrectomy community.
Yeah, I wonder if there's almost like a misconception after having the gastrectomy that they're doing well, that there is that seen weight loss, that they probably in appearance then look, air quote here, better.
That's very accurate.
You started to share some of the resources, but I wanted to ask if you could just illuminate some of the resources for patients and survivors.
Yeah, there's certainly the resources that we share commonly with our patient survivors is really any stomach cancer, gastric cancer patient should be seen or treated at an NCI designated cancer center, a comprehensive cancer center. Those are the centers that are designated by the National Cancer Institute and that have the most well-rounded, comprehensive care available. And they typically are high volume centers. So they've seen a lot of cases. So they have the experience and the team behind it to be able to provide that well-rounded care, that full spectrum of care, you might say. Other things that we certainly provide to our patients, we do an educational symposium up to twice a year, depending on the year. We'll be hosting one at Penn Medicine this month of October. That's a patient caregiver educational symposium where we gather experts in the field to do a full day event of education discussing the current status of the disease, different treatments that are happening, and different things that patients and caregivers can do to have a better journey from diagnosis to survivorship. And certainly, our Gastrectomy Connections support group is a huge resource for patients and survivors. It's probably one of the more popular programs that we have because it is so unique. We do certainly, there are things that are out there, different organizations that we refer our patients to, different financial support organizations, because we don't get directly involved with individual financial support of patients, or if they're having trouble with insurance approvals, there's organizations out there that specialize in that. So we refer them to those. There's state level resources as well. There's resources at any individual health system that a patient might need. And believe it or not, even though I'm the only person here, I take the time when I connect with these patients and survivors to find those resources for them. So if they can't find them themselves, I do the work, I do the research, and I make sure that they get the help that they need and deserve.
Like a private investigator.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoy that part of the work for sure, because I get to meet a lot of people virtually for this in this job. I mean, a lot of people in person as well, but getting to know these people and helping them navigate this very difficult, challenging journey. Because again, in the United States in particular, there's just on a population-wide scale, it's less than 2% of cancer. So there's just not a lot of immediate resources available to them other than some of the common things. So they do have to reach out to us. And if we can't help, there's organizations that we refer them to.
I'm sure that's really helpful to them because as a cancer survivor myself, it's very common for you not to be aware of what is available to you in the world.
Right. And a lot of our patients tell us that because they were the first or maybe second or third stomach cancer patient that their doctor's ever seen, that they felt or their doctor really didn't know what to do.
What is No Stomach for Cancer doing to celebrate the Gastric Cancer Awareness Month of November?
It's a big month for us, as you can imagine. So we've been doing an annual walk or run, depending on what the fundraiser wants to do, but we do, which is common in the cancer advocacy and fundraising space. So we do an annual No Stomach for Cancer walk, and those are walks that we help and encourage individuals and patients and families and caregivers to organize walks all around the world during the month of November. So that's one big thing we do every year in November. We've been starting to do some cooperative things with the American Cancer Society, amplifying some of our messaging during the month of November, sharing those messages and those social media posts with the American Cancer Society's followers. We collaborate with other stomach cancer advocacy groups to do things in the month of November. One thing in particular is lighting landmarks and buildings periwinkle blue, because that's the official color for Stomach Cancer Awareness Month. So we're doing that in partnership, collaboration with other groups. The Canadian group that we collaborate with on this initiative is called My Gut Feeling, and that's kind of our Canadian peer, our counterpart. So we help them along with some other stomach cancer groups to do that during November. And obviously, as being Stomach Cancer Awareness Month, and our founder early on recognized the importance of protecting it as Stomach Cancer Awareness Month. So our organization trademarks Stomach Cancer Awareness Month. So we get a lot of requests. Can we have permission to use the terminology Stomach Cancer Awareness Month? And we gladly do that. So we encourage the use of it, because there was you guys might be a little too young to remember this, but some time ago, there were some nefarious individuals who were hijacking the Pink campaign from Susan G. Komen, and they were profiteering off of it. And none of the monies that they were getting from what they were promoting and selling was going towards the cause.
Piracy, that's what that is.
That's what they were doing. Yep. So this was something that certainly stood out to our founder. And so early on, she took the charge, took the lead, and had Congress pass November as Stomach Cancer Awareness Month in 2010. And then, of course, trademarked it after that, so that none of these pirates, as you might call them, could profit off of this disease without us being able to do something about it.
Well, Jon, was there anything else you wanted to add for our conversation or to have for the listeners?
No, I mean, one thing we always say to our patients is, know your risks, know your family history. It's important not to ignore persistent symptoms, even if your doctor is saying it could be, food related, stress related, sleep related, job related, all those things. Don't take no for an answer. Seek a second opinion if needed, because stomach cancers, it's a sneaky disease. It can go from 0 to 60 very quickly if left untreated. In particular, if H. pylori is something that is persistent in an individual. So talk to family members about family history too. That's something we always talk about. So, anyone listening, if there's any family history whatsoever of cancer, talk about what kind of cancer. Was it lobular breast cancer? Was it maybe stomach cancer? Was it intestinal cancer? Or just have the conversations with family, have conversations with your doctor. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, because stomach cancer is aggressive, and the only way to treat it curatively is to catch it at an early stage.
Jon, wanted to thank you for being with us today and really being that one-man band.
No, I appreciate it very much. Certainly stomach cancer. If you and I walked down the street today and asked 10,000 people if they knew that stomach cancer was as prevalent as it is, they would probably look at you in dismay and shock. There's certainly a lot of other cancers that get more of the media attention. Public knows about those diseases, those types of cancers, but believe it or not, stomach cancer is more prevalent than those popular ones. We want to change that conversation. We want stomach cancer to be part of the conversation. People like Toby Keith, the famous country musician who recently passed from stomach cancer, it raised a little bit of awareness for our community, but quickly faded into the background. And we want that to change. We want it to be as commonly thought of or known as the pink campaign, as breast cancer, or as pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer. So I think if people and your listeners know more, and you're sharing this with your audience, know that stomach cancer has been so prevalent for so long. Hopefully we can change some minds and get people to talk more about it.
And thank you so much, Jon.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Our podcast will discuss topics related to cancer treatment and the recovery process, including diagnosis, family support, resources, medications, and nutrition. We aspire to have conversations pertinent and relevant to the cancer journey. Thank you for listening to the Sick and Good podcast. We'd like to invite you to connect with us on our social media at Instagram and Facebook accounts. We're also happy to share that we have launched the Sick and Good podcast website at sickandgood.com. This website is a place to read our bios, subscribe to the podcast, listen to full episodes, or read full transcripts, and contact us with your questions or comments. We care about your listener experience and would love to hear from you to keep the conversation going on the topics of cancer and wellness.